Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad you can join me here today. I recently heard a podcast between Dr. Joe Dispenza and Stephen Bartlett on the Diary of a CEO. And was a phenomenal podcast that honestly changed the way I think about things. And I thought I'd make a video to share what I've learned in the podcast. I think you should definitely listen to it if you get a chance. I'll leave a description of the podcast below as well. But it was a phenomenal podcast. So Dr. Joe Dispenza is a neuroscientist. He's a doctor of research. He's done a lot of work on the mind and the brain and neuroscience, neuroplasticity, how our brains work and how we can change reality through our thoughts and our minds. He's even used quantum physics to be able to explore the different dimensions that we currently have experience to and use that in his theories. He's written a few books, quite a few books, and I've read a couple of his books, and they are absolutely powerful books. One of the books that is really good is called Evolve Your Brain. I think it's a phenomenal book. Another one is called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. There's another one called You Are the Placebo. The fourth one, The Secret Language of the Heart, and another one is called Becoming Supernatural. All of his books are phenomenal. But I think if you want to start in one place, I would recommend starting with Evolve Your Brain as the first book to read, because that lays out the details and the framework that he talks about. Anyways, going back to the podcast I listened to, I mean, he said a lot of things in the podcast that made me stop. I had to pause the podcast, think about it, rewind it, and then listen to it again. One of those moments where he basically made me stop in my tracks. I was actually in the gym listening to this. He made a statement, such a controversial statement, a powerful statement, that I had to just stop, think about it, write it down, and then continue listening to the podcast after that. He says, "You can't tell me that your pain is so brutal that you can't change." Let me repeat that. You can't tell me that your pain is so brutal that you can't change. What does he mean by that? He says that in his line of work, he has seen so many people whose pain has been, like, past trauma has been phenomenal. Like it's been so bad, so awful, and they could come out of that and come on the other side of it. So what is stopping me and you from coming out of our pain? And he gives tools and tricks on what we need to do to be able to experience it. And I'll talk about it in a few moments as well. But essentially that one statement just made me stop in my tracks and think about, really, if we think about it, I mean, we don't have to feel pain if we don't want to. Even if the pain is there, we don't have to. We're talking about emotional pain here. Physical pain as well. As when you read his story, there was a story basically when he was young, he was hit by a truck and he got like really bad injuries, and he cured himself without the use of medicine. He used all of these techniques that he talks about to be able to cure himself. So if I'm talking about emotional pain, but even physical pain can be cured with this. But when it comes to emotional pain, we don't have to stay there. We don't have to stay in that area of pain just because we are there. Okay, so I want to explain or describe three lessons that I learned from the podcast, and then hopefully connect all of these dots together. And I would definitely recommend. I hope that after listening to this, you do watch the podcast, because I think Dr. Joe Dispenza will do a phenomenal job to convincing you on why this is so important. Okay, so lesson number one that I learned. The first thing he says is 75 to 90% of chronic stress leads to health issues. A lot of the times, the reason we get ill is because we are so stressed. And the reason we are so stressed is because in our heads, we have so many things going on. We catastrophize, we create scenarios in our heads. Even if things are okay, we dispute reality, we change it, we transform reality just to make our minds align with what is happening outside. So it might not be happening outside, but because we catastrophize so much in our minds, we create a sense of a reality, And then over time, that reality becomes a reality, because that reality in our head transfers. Whatever is in your head will transfer into reality. And then you'll be like, oh yes, I expected this to happen. But of course you expected it to happen, because in your head you already created the scenario and the mindset that it was only a matter of time before that transforms into the universe. Because whatever you manifest outwards will become into the universe. And he basically talks about how this whole thing of stress and all the things that we currently have in our minds, we create so many sicknesses and illnesses, a lot of sickness and illness through that, because we're so focused on the negativity. And for some people, it becomes an identity that I identify myself as a victim. Something was done wrong on me, so now I am a victim, and I'm going to hold that label of me, Kumail, being oppressed, being a victim, someone who hasn't been given a fair chance in life, and I'm going to live the rest of my life feeling that way because I'm a victim. But you don't have to be a victim. You don't have to be stuck in your head in that way, because you can change reality. And that's why he says he even cures people who couldn't walk, people who couldn't do things like physical ailments. He could cure it through the mind. And we have multiple, not just from Dr. Joe Dispenza, we have a lot of research about these things, where meditation and all of these things can cure people of physical illness, of cancers. People get cured of cancer. This is not like a woo-hoo fancy type of like thinking, up in the air and airy-fairy things. It's reality. Because when if you listen to it, he talks about the quantum field and how that's all related. I'll actually talk about quantum field in a moment, but it's so interesting how he brings everything together in terms of the different dimensions, and it makes sense. It actually absolutely makes sense that if you alter your mindset, then you can change reality. Just the way your negative mindset has caused a negative reality, a positive mindset can cause a positive reality. Now, a second lesson that I learned. So the first lesson was that a lot of stress is a root cause of our sicknesses and our problems in our life, and we need to take stock and account of that stress in our life, and any other things that we catastrophize and create all these mountain out of a molehill situations in our heads. It happens all the time. It happens to everyone. The second thing is he talks about the power of the subconscious mind. In fact, one of the books that he published in 2012, I believe, is called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Because we're so used to being ourselves. He's trying to break the mold here, right? And that's why he talks about the power of the subconscious mind. That's why the quantum field will come in as well. But before I go to the quantum field, he talks about this whole concept of neuroplasticity. So this is a new area of research that has come about, where neuroplasticity is where you can change, you can rewire your brain, right? So we have these stories of people who went into a car crash, and they were an introvert before the car crash, and then after the car crash suddenly they become an extrovert, and their whole personality changes because their whole brain has been rewired. Now, we don't need to go to a car crash to be able to do that. We can actually manifest that reality. We can change the rewiring of our brain just by creating thoughts and impulses in our heads that transform our realities. And I think that's what when he talks about this, he says creating a higher level of consciousness. And when he was talking about this, he introduced this whole concept of waves. We have alpha waves, beta waves, gamma waves. Beta waves are the ways that we are when we're awake, right? It is our thinking brain that causes beta waves. But then you have alpha brains when we are going into dipping into the state of sleep as well. Between conscious and subconscious and unconscious wavelengths, and that's where we can create changes in these gamma. The gamma waves at the top, but alpha, beta, alpha in the alpha waves. You have to listen to the talk to be able to really understand this phenomenal mindset. But basically, it's in the conscious mind, which is the beta wavelength. You can't do this change because it's your mind constantly chattering and talking about things. But you have to go to this level where you are in between your conscious and subconscious mind, and you can create this reality and cause a change in the way you think about things, in the way you perceive reality. You basically come out of yourself. And that's what meditation does is it's this state between sleeping and being awake is like an in-between state, like an isthmus or an intermediary state where you are dipping in and out of a higher conscious. And I'll talk about God in a moment as well, because he talks about God. But what you're doing is you're accessing that reality through these wavelengths, and it is these wavelengths that because when we're in the beta state, we get so confused and we get so obsessed and occupied with those thoughts, we aren't able to step out of them. But when you actually come out into these unconscious states, that's when the real change happens. Where you affect your subconscious mind, you create neuroplasticity, you change the rewiring of your brain, and then that identity you had of a victim mindset, that changes because you can finally get free of yourself and tell yourself, I don't have to be a victim. Why do I have to be a victim? I can free myself from the past. I can bring my body to the present. And that's why you have like books like Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, where you live in the current reality, the current moment. Because essentially when you think about the past and the future, and between fear and hope and confusion, you can't access these states, these higher levels of consciousness. It's only when you decide to step out. That's why meditation is so powerful, because you are actually stepping out. You are acknowledging those thoughts, but you're letting them pass through because you don't want to indulge in them. Because that's what creates this whole victim mindset as well, because you have told your mind a narrative, and now you just follow the narrative along because this is how you've always been. But then what I started with, he says, you can't tell me that your past has been so brutal that you cannot change. If you want to change, it is your responsibility and it is on you to change. Don't tell anyone else. I'm telling this to myself, by the way. I shouldn't tell anyone else that I can't change because you have no idea what happened in my past, my childhood, and what. Yes, agreed. Of course, your childhood was difficult, it was traumatic. I agree. But my childhood is not now. I'm an adult now. It's not in my childhood. So why am I bringing the baggage back from my childhood to my current life, where it was there at a certain point in time, but my reality at the current moment is not my childhood. I'm not living that childhood moment. Maybe you have trauma now as well. And again, this is a powerful technique where you can actually step out of the trauma and see yourself from above. Through these practices, through meditation. He's got a retreat in America that he does all the time, and if you want to attend the retreat, I think it's probably, I've never been, but probably a phenomenal experience, I think. All his details are available on his website, but it's such a powerful mindset technique and such a powerful trick, not trick, but powerful way of being, because you change your whole personality because of this, through this whole new levels of thinking, new levels of consciousness, new waves that you look at. And that's why he talks about quantum physics, where we have waves and particles, and basically what he's saying is you have something. So our thoughts are affected, right? Our thoughts are there, and they affect reality. Now, because we work in waves, if you affect the wave, the top level, what falls at the bottom is then affected. The particles get affected too, right? So if, for example, you have a particle here and you send a gamma wave through, the particle starts resonating, right? But the stronger the wave, the stronger the particle starts resonating. The same thing with our thoughts and our actions, right? Our reality. If we find a way to manifest those thoughts that come out of a victim mindset, those particles, those actions, our reality, our life will then travel at a different wavelength compared to what we've been traveling at the current moment, in a lower level of scheme. But now, because we're operating from a higher level of thought, our reality operates at a higher level of wavelengths as well, a higher level of living life. Then you can live your life to the fullest, because now nothing is stopping you. Because if your thought, before it was my thoughts that were stopping me. Now if my thoughts have been refined and purified and gone through this whole level of detection and purification, like just like when you create a diamond, you pass it through a lot of heat and a lot of pain to be able to come out a refreshed, like a great looking diamond. In the same way, if we purify our thoughts in a way where we basically remove all of these negative mindsets, then when those thoughts translate into reality, the wavelengths are at a much higher level compared to what we're operating at. And it's so, like, I really want to, like, really explore this whole level of quantum physics and quantum mechanics, and how that affects our our reality as well. It's such a phenomenal worldview that I think I'm going to spend some time trying to think about how that affects our life. And that's why when you read books like, I've read this, I've made a video about this as well, but books like The Luck Factor, where they say that people who believe that they're lucky, tend to be luckier than people who don't believe that they're lucky. What is happening here? The lucky people, in their mind, they're creating a different wavelength. They're creating a higher level of wavelength. The thoughts are like operating at a higher level. So when those translate into reality, I mean, it'd be the same. If I come across the same person with a higher luck threshold, let's say, or luck, whatever you want to call it, and someone else comes with a lower luck threshold, we come across the same person or the same thing. But because we're operating at different wavelengths, those opportunities will present to me in a different way to him, because I'm operating at a higher level. So when I manifest into the world, I am getting something more than I would if I wasn't operating at that level. And other books like Mindset, right? Carol Dweck, multi-million bestseller, million copy bestseller, sorry. Again, fantastic book, phenomenal book, where she talks about going from a fixed state mindset to a growth state mindset, where we can change our reality. And she talks about how sometimes talent gets confused, because people who have talent feel like they have to prove themselves, and they're scared of failure. They don't come out of their comfort zones. They just do what they know, rather than growing through that. And that's what a growth mindset is, where you grow through opportunities, through failures, and become a better version of yourself. But it's all mindset. It's all in the head. So when we're operating at a higher level in our thoughts, when those translate into reality, the world is our oyster. We can change reality. We can change things in our world just by operating at a higher level. Okay, so that was lesson number 2. Now, lesson number 3 to me was probably the most powerful, even though I spent so long in lesson number 2. But lesson number 3, so Stephen Bartlett asks Joe Dispenza a question at the end, and he tells him, I'm just paraphrasing here, but it seems to me, Stephen is saying, that you believe in a higher order, a higher being, that because when you're talking about all of these subconscious levels and a higher level of consciousness, you believe in a higher being, maybe a God. And Dr. Joe Dispenza says, yes, I believe in a God. But he didn't stop there, which is fine. I mean, that's I believe in a God too. But he went a step further, and he says, I believe that there is a divine within each and every one of us, i.e. there is one God, and then there are many gods within us, within individuals, because when we operate at a higher level of consciousness, we are connecting to that divine being. I mean, that's phenomenal. Like, when you think about it, we are basically saying that we are godly individuals. We have the divine present within us. There's a famous Arabic saying that says, do you think that you're a small entity when you have the whole universe within you? There's a whole universe within you. Why are you considering yourself so small? There's a whole world within your whole universe within you. The world is your oyster. But that's because the divine is within you. So when you start tapping to these higher levels of consciousness, you start becoming godly. You become like what God is, right? You become like a godly human being, a godly individual. So you walk through this earth, and then you spread that, you manifest the joy and the happiness and whatever you feel, you manifest to other people, and then you become of service to other people, because now you're a divine being manifesting. God is manifesting through you. He's acting through you because you have surrendered yourself. Again, going back to one of the books that I looked at a while ago, called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. You've surrendered yourself to this higher conscious, higher level of being, where now you realize that because you're operating at such a high level, you don't get held back by all of these things. So let's say I come back home and I don't know, or I go to work, and one of my work colleagues is rude to me, and I'm really upset by it. And I want to say something. I want to send HR an email saying that, you know what, she needs to be fired because she can't talk to anyone like that. And I stop myself and I say, hold on. These are words. How are words so powerful that they affect my inner being? They're just words. Like, words are just words. I can say words, you can say words. But they're so powerful that they've affected my inner being, inner consciousness. I feel upset. I feel depressed. I feel angry because of words. But then when you go to this higher level of consciousness and you step out, you realize you don't have to let everything affect you because you're operating at such a level, at a divine level. I genuinely when he talks about all of these things, I feel like when you connect to a higher level, a higher being, when you connect to God, you operate at this higher level. So when you manifest to the world, what someone sees as something to be angry about and something to get upset about, a person operating at a higher level sees it as, I feel sorry for that person. Someone skipped you in the traffic. Maybe they're going to the hospital. Maybe their wife is pregnant and they have to rush to the hospital to make sure that they deliver on time or whatever. Like, when you operate at a higher level of consciousness, your whole worldview and your whole reality changes. But that work has to happen all in the head, because like in the heart. I'll make a different video about this, but I want to talk about knowledge versus wisdom, and then heart versus mind and intellect, and the spirit and the soul. Like, how are all of these connected? Spirit, soul, heart, intellect, and then how are those connected to knowledge and wisdom? I'll make a whole video about this because I've thought about these things. But just talking about the heart and the mind, like when you change your mind and your heart, you operate at a higher level of reality. And then your whole world changes. No wonder it changes. No wonder when you talk about mindset and how people with a growth state mindset, they grow and get opportunities that other people wouldn't, or the luck factor, or Michael Singer's story in the surrender experiment. When he surrendered, he obviously accessed this higher level of consciousness that allowed him to be able to surrender himself. And he built $1 million business. He built a temple. He has meditation retreats like everywhere, happening all the time. All through surrender, and that all happens through the head, because again, surrender only happens when you submit. But my default state is to fight. If something comes my way, I will fight it because this is the way it should be. This is the way I want it to be. But who said it has to be the way you want it to be? Right? Maybe it's actually better for you that it shouldn't be the way you want it to be. I've seen this in my life personally. I wanted something so much. I got it. And then afterwards I realized, I wish I never got it. It was actually bad for me. But I wanted it in the first place, so I can't blame anyone but myself because I wanted it. But then you realize, actually, sometimes you have to submit, because what God gives you is better, is much better than what you would have thought in your wildest imaginations. And you will realize this. I will realize this when I work through these different higher planes of consciousness and higher levels of consciousness. I'd like to end with a quote that Dr. Joe Dispenza mentioned in his podcast, which I thought was powerful, and I'll end with this. I know I've gone on for a while. He says, if you keep practicing being greater than your environment, you will be greater than your environment. Once more, if you keep practicing being greater than your environment, you will be greater than your environment. It's so powerful. Like, you got to keep on practicing this, and the more you practice it, the better you become, and you will be greater than your environment. Then those words and whatever people tell you won't affect you. I think that's such a powerful way of being. And one more thing before I end, he spoke about how people affect people. So he talks about his retreats where he says everyone operates at a higher level of consciousness, but because they're all there together, they're all helping each other to operate at this higher level. And for me, that shows the fundamental importance of having the right people to help you operate at this level. Because at the moment I'm operating here, I have a friend who's operating here. If we come together, we can actually meet at a point where we can help each other, because maybe he's operating at a lower level in a different aspect of his life and I'm operating at a higher level. But when we come together, we uplift everyone else together, right? So we lift everyone together, and together we can operate at higher levels of consciousness. But people affect people. That's why you need a good circle of people, a community, friends, I don't know, family members, spouses, whatever, to help you operate at this higher level of consciousness. Because once you do, the world is your oyster. I mean, you can change lives. You can change lives. I mean, you can ask Dr. George Dispenza, and he will tell you he's changed lives through this. You can see he's a very genuine person. He's not in it for the money or for the fame or for the reputation. He genuinely cares about this. And when you listen to him, you feel that passion that comes out. He genuinely wants people to change their mindsets, to change their brains, their subconscious mind, that will affect the conscious mind and help them live a better life. So I hope this does encourage you to please listen to the podcast. If you don't listen to any other podcast, just listen to that one podcast. I think it was the 13th of March 2025 between Stephen Bartlett and Dr. Joe Dispenza on the Diary of a CEO. Phenomenal podcast. Like I said, I'll put a link for it in the description below, so you can even access it if you don't want to look for it. And yeah, I hope you listened to it, and if you do, please do let me know how you found it, what your key takeaways are, and what you think about it. And until next time, see you soon.